Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. In today's video we're going to be discussing the Annihilation Barge and how it's going to be making a comeback to our lists when we're playing Necrons. Now before getting into today's video, quite some time ago I asked members of the Discord to simply comment shout me out Planet 40k and I completely forgot about it. So I've actually just remembered it, thankfully. So shout out goes to Zifnab Reality Banker Smith, and I'm going to bring back the shout outs in each and every video. All you got to do is simply comment on the video and a random person will be selected for a shout out. Also guys, if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, why haven't you subscribed yet? There's 60% of you that still have yet to subscribe, so just do me a massive favour by clicking the subscribe button below. There's no cost involved, it is free on YouTube. And thank you all to the 7,000 of you that have already actually subscribed. So as for today's video, the Annihilation Barge, of course it's now been buffed with a new balanced data slate. It's now got the core keyword. So that's going to make a number of changes to how you're going to be using the Annihilation Barge, and that's what we're going to get stuck into today. So we're going to kind of flip reverse the video. We normally start off with the abilities and things like that, but today we're going to start off with how we're going to interact with the secondary objectives. Now one in particular from the Necron Codex is Ancient Machineries. Now in order to score this objective you need a core unit or a canoptic unit. Now of course the Annihilation Barge is now core, so it can potentially do this Ancient Machineries if you wanted to. Now it is an action in order to actually score the secondary in that particular turn. And if you do have objectives secured, you're going to be scoring it at the end of your turn as opposed to your next command phase. So if you're playing the Necron Dynasty, or maybe you're playing Eternal Conquerors from the custom codes, then you're going to have objectives secured, but then you're going to be scoring it on your turn. But the thing is, you don't need to score it on your turn in this case, because the Annihilation Barge is quite tanky. It does have 8 wounds with a 3+ armor save, and we'll get onto the quantum shielding later in the video. Now what you want to be doing, if you're using the Annihilation Barge to be scoring this objective, is to have the permanent protocol of Sudden Storm active for the entire game, and simply use Directive 2 so that the unit can perform an action while still making attacks with its ranged weapons without the action actually failing. Because of course if you do the action without that protocol, then you're not going to be able to shoot any of your ranged weapons. Now that quantum shielding ability I just mentioned, it's a 5+ invulnerable save, and any unmodified wound rolls of a 1, 2 or 3 will always fail, irrespective of any abilities the weapon of the attacker may have. So when you combine that with toughness 6, 8 wounds and a 3+ armor save, it's quite a resilient model, and you can even buff the quantum shielding ability with the stratagem Quantum Deflection for a command point, to make that 5+ invulnerable save go to a 4+ invulnerable save. Now the Annihilation Barges did not get a points reduction, but it's still 120 points for a pretty resilient unit that can now score Ancient Machineries. So that's kind of where I wanted to start the video today. The fact that they can now do Ancient Machineries, they're pretty much now a very tanky action monkey. Now 120 points for an action monkey of course is quite pricey, but you've got a much higher chance of actually scoring the secondary objective with the action because of the resiliency of the model. Now as for the weapons, you've got either the Gauss Cannons or the Tesla Cannon, and then it comes with a Twin Tesla Destructor. Now with the Gauss Cannon you will have to pay 5 points in order to take it, but it's only 24-inch range, heavy 3, strength 6, -3 AP and D3 damage. So you want to be using that against power armor in particular, although it will be a -2 rather than a -3 because of the armor of contempt rule. But D3, it is a little bit swingy, maybe you roll poorly and only roll a 1, but if you're going up against, again, Space Marines with power armor, on average you're going to be scoring 2 damage. So this is what the weapon's really for, it's an infantry remover. Now the Tesla Cannon, it has the same strength and the same amount of attacks, slightly better range, but now there's no AP. Now you can't reduce 0 AP because of armor of contempt, it's already on 0, it's only damage 1, so you want to be firing this at weaker opponents. Toughness 3 ideally because you wound on 2s, but generally enemy units that don't have a high armor save, such as your Horde units, that's what this weapon should be targeting. And then the Twin Tesla Destructor, which isn't optional, you do just get that. A nice 36-inch range, heavy 10, strength 7, no AP, 1 damage. Feels very similar to the Tesla Cannon, because strength 6 and strength 7, there isn't much difference there. You're still going to be wounding toughness 3 models on 2s, and still going to be wounding toughness 4 models on 3s, so there's not really much difference. But bear in mind that with both the Tesla weapons, any 6s will explode to 2 additional hits. So a nice anti-infantry from the weapons there. Now further to add to those Tesla weapons, of course you've got the Malevolent Arcing Stratagem for a command point, so you can be throwing out extra mortal wounds to nearby enemy units. Now as for some new synergy for the Annihilation Barges, of course we've got to start with the Silent King. Pretty much everything in the Codex now synergizes with the Silent King, so it's always a place to start. In particular the Pharaoh of Stars Aura ability, for core units within 6 inches they get to reroll their hit rolls at range. So that's going to be pretty decent for Annihilation Barge. Now the Pharaoh of Blades ability, not so much. You don't really want to be in melee with this thing, although it can fire into combat because it's a vehicle. But as for the actual fight phase, it's not doing much there. Relentless March of course gives it an extra inch of movement, and My Will Be Done gives it a +1 to the hit roll, so they'll be hitting on 2s and re-rolling everything as well. So you're likely going to be scoring quite a lot of hits, and hey, maybe even turn those 1s into 6s, which will then explode. Now you can of course get the My Will Be Done ability from other sources of the codex. You've got the Catacomb Command Barges, the Overlord, or of course all the named Overlord characters as well. They've got the same abilities, My Will Be Done and Relentless March. Although in this case you kind of want something that's going to match the speed of the Annihilation Barge, so a Catacomb Command Barge or the Silent King are more appropriate. And Illumina Zarez, who's made a nice comeback with this balanced data slate, and of course he's going to be buffing core units, so with the Annihilation Barge now being core, you're going to get a random roll on a D3. Now the strength isn't going to make any effect whatsoever, like I already mentioned. Nothing's really going to be happening in the fight phase with the Annihilation Barge. However, getting an extra bit of toughness could be nice. I mean, you've already got quantum shielding anyway, but if you're taking mass firepower, it can help you somewhat in that sense. Or then number 3, improving the ballistic skill value of the models by 1. So it'll have a ballistic skill value of a 2+ for the rest of the game. Out of all of the 3, that's probably the one that I would want with the Annihilation Barge, but the toughness option isn't too bad either. Now Royal Wardens have now made a nice comeback as well because of course there's a lot more core units within the game, so they're going to be falling back and still being able to fire. Now as already mentioned, a vehicle model can fire into combat in the shooting phase. However, if you do fall back, of course you're now going to be able to select your target as opposed to being forced to shoot into engagement range. So that's another option for you, a Royal Warden. Then the last bit of synergy I wanted to mention isn't so much a new synergy. Just bear in mind that the Canoptic Spiders with their Fabricator Claw Arrays can be healing Dynasty vehicle models up to D3 lost wounds within 3 inches. So if you've got your Annihilation Barge, again doing the action, Ancient Machineries, this thing is going to aid that because it's going to be keeping that Annihilation Barge up and running. Now we have in fact recently done a video in regards to the Canoptic Spider, so if you haven't actually watched that one yet, I'd advise you to jump into our Necron playlist and find it there, or if I do remember, I'll be putting it in the top right corner of the screen now. Okay, so before we move on to the Dynasty codes, I just wanted to briefly mention here that there are other options that you can use, things such as the Veil of Darkness Relic, Implacable Conqueror from the Warlord traits, but you're not really going to be needing them. I mean, for example, the Veil of Darkness Relic isn't really required because the Annihilation Barge itself is already moving 12 inches, and the Implacable Conqueror aura is a reroll to the charge roll. Again, you don't really want this thing charging, unless you're tying something up I suppose, but you're not really going to be building a list specifically to get this thing into combat. So let's swiftly move on to the Dynasty codes. Now selected codes that are going to work quite nicely with the Annihilation Barge. So the first one being the Nihilak Dynasty, or alternatively of course Eternal Conquerors, with objectives secured, a nice tanky model with 8 wounds. It's going to be pretty hard to get rid of, and of course if you're doing Ancient Machineries as mentioned earlier in the video, you're going to be scoring in your own turn as opposed to waiting for your next turn. The second one of course is the Mefret Dynasty, which is our shooty Necron Dynasty, getting an extra 3 inch to the range, and of course the extra bit of AP at half range as well isn't too bad. The command protocol associated with the Mefret Dynasty may come in handy, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Then from the custom codes, Relentlessly Expansionists, which would be one of the options that I'd select for that pre-game 6 inch movement. You're going to be getting this thing onto an objective nice and early because of course it's already moving quite quickly. If you're doing Ancient Machineries, you're going to be getting this down quite nice and early. Then the last one, Interplanetary Invaders. This one I don't use that often if I'm honest with you, but vehicles are eligible to shoot in the turn in which they fell back. Now I can see this one making a nice comeback with this new balanced data slate because of course all the vehicles got the core keyword, and being able to fall back out of combat and being able to select your targets as opposed to firing into that engagement range could be more beneficial, although it will be at a -1 to hit when you're doing so. But then the second bullet point to this, if you stay within engagement range and fire your weapons in the shooting phase, heavy weapons will not incur that -1 to hit penalty. Now of course the Annihilation Barge has just got heavy weapons, so firing into combat normally would be a -1, so you'll be hitting on 4s without any buffs, but with Interplanetary Invaders there's no negative there. So let's move on to those command protocols, and we're going to be going through all 6 of them and kind of deciding which one you're going to be taking as your permanent protocol throughout the entire game. Now from the first one, Protocol of Eternal Guardian, I'm likely going with Directive number 2, just having that 5+ Overwatch with quite a lot of shots, especially with those exploding 6s as well. Now as for Protocol of Sunstorm, adding 1 to the movement is quite nice, but I would definitely be selecting Directive 2 in this case to be able to perform an action while still making the range attacks without the action actually failing. That's kind of the whole point of this video today. You want your barge doing Ancient Machineries, it's quick enough to get onto different objectives, and it'll be tanking all the shots, and if you're taking this Directive number 2, then you're still going to be firing your payload. If you're using Protocol of Vengeful Stars, which is the Mefret Dynasty option, so if you are with the Mefret Dynasty, of course you get both of them, but if you're not with the Mefret Dynasty, I would probably select directive number 1. So you're getting an extra little bit of AP, so even your Tesla weapons will now be -1 AP. But maybe you prefer directive 2 to remove benefits of cover. I just prefer number 1. Now Protocol of Hungry Void, I probably wouldn't even bother taking that. If you were basing your list around Annihilation Barges and other shooter units, this is pretty much a melee based protocol, so I'm not going to talk about that one today. As for the Protocol of Undying Legions, of course directive number 1, getting that double living metal off to keep this thing up and running. Now the reanimation protocols is going to have no use whatsoever for an Annihilation Barge. Then number 6, Protocol of Conquering Tyrants. I'd be using this for directive number 2 to be able to shoot in a turn that this thing fell back. So again, you can select your targets as opposed to shooting into engagement range. Although again, it will be at a -1 to hit penalty. Now directive 1 in this case does have some uses. If you want to spread your Annihilation Barge a little bit further afield, away from say your Catacomb Command Barge, your Silent King, maybe even your Overlord models. So that way those noble models have a longer range with their aura abilities, so mine will be done as a perfect example there. So yeah, that's all the new synergy for the Annihilation Barge. But the main thing to take away from this video today is the fact that the Annihilation Barge can be doing the Ancient Machinery's secondary objective. I'm not saying it's the best unit in the Codex to be able to do that actual objective, but we've now got additional options to do it. I used to tend to pretty much just do it with Canoptic Scarab Swarms, but now we've got more options in play. So guys, tell me what you think in terms of the Annihilation Barge. Do you think it's making a comeback now with this new balanced data slate? Let me know in the comments below. Also remember, I'm going to be randomly shouting out a comment in the next video, so get your comments down below. So yeah, that's it from me today. See you later.